This past week, I was sitting in an office down at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church on the Common in Lynn at a meeting of ECHO, which is the Essex County Community Organization, an interfaith alliance that this church supports in every way, an alliance that works on justice issues together. We were meeting as part of the Beloved Community Initiative, which is our diverse religious communities' response in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. We were talking about the recent murders of 2 black men in Lynn, reviewing conflicting reports about how they happened. One was in police custody, one was killed during a shootout. We were mourning both of them as we would mourn any human being, but these especially because both of these men were closely connected to our ECHO community. One of their mothers is a member of St. Stephen's, actually. And we were wondering how our organization could be a bridge between police and citizens in our community. We broke up into small groups for an exercise, and I was paired with an elderly woman named Joanne. I'd never met her before, and we shared stories. The one thing she said that most stayed with me is, I really thought that we were done with all of this in the civil rights movement, which she well remembered. Later in the week, I spent some time with a 97-year-old member of this congregation, John Murray. We talked about politics, as he is still very much engaged with what's going on in the world. And he expressed much the same sentiment that Joanne had earlier expressed. We were talking about the presidential race, and he said, "Isn't it crazy? It seems we're going backwards in some ways as a country." So I want to talk to you this morning about the notion of progress, which is one of the most cherished foundational beliefs of progressives, liberal congregations being considered progressive communities. And the cherished foundational belief is things move forward. We learn more. The unbeatable combination of human ingenuity and scientific and moral understanding move us, as we sing in a very popular hymn, forward through the ages in unbroken line. History, that is to say, history goes in a straight line from the unenlightened past to a shining future. In theological terms, we call this a teleology. The idea that humanity is redeemed from sin and suffering at some point, and therefore you regard all of what is currently happening as a means to those ends. There is a beautiful passage from the book of Revelation, a favorite book, biblical text of the evangelical Christian tradition, true. But this passage also expresses a religious belief shared by Jews and liberal Christians as well, that the Messiah or God will eventually usher in a new realm of peace and glory. And here's the passage. "Behold, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth passed away, and there is no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride, adorned for her husband." There are some days, don't you think, when we are just thinking, yes, I could take a new world, you know. In 1886, the very influential and very talented Unitarian minister, a young man named James Freeman Clarke, wrote a treatise called 5 Points of Theology for the Future, because Unitarians in his era were no clearer on what were the foundational theological beliefs than we really are today. I mean, we were always struggling with this. How do we define what our beliefs are? But his 5th point of our theological tradition was, he wrote it as this: the continuity of human development in all worlds or the progress of mankind onward and upward forever. Somebody's finishing it for me, you know it. Two very important faith claims here. The first faith claim being that we're not even done with our personal progress here in this lifetime, but we keep on progressing even after our death. That's a very universalist idea. It would have been very important for the founders of our congregation in Lynn. Some days I feel like, yes, thank God we get more time in the afterlife possibly to work on ourselves, and on other days it just makes me feel really tired. Like, oh my gosh, is there no end to the work? But that last line, onward and upward forever, became a central rallying cry not just for Unitarians, but also for American culture. At this period of intense industrialization, think about what was going on in 1886. Through technology, it was hoped, the country was going to get more powerful. Life was going to improve for everybody. And so let's just keep producing and manufacturing and consuming so that everybody has a better and better life. Well, at the time, no one could possibly have foreseen the amount of environmental degradation that would come from that attitude. But today, we're more savvy. We know we've lived with it for long enough, and so we have a different awareness. We're more aware now that progress is a far more complicated evolution than the 19th century could have possibly realized. We're grateful. We are so grateful for the evolution of knowledge from which we benefit. We're grateful for the ways in which the shackles of ignorance and suffering have been loosened by humanity's progress onward and upward. And it's a blessing to be part of those advancements. You think about Clara Barton's lifetime and the kind of diseases she would have been treating with her corps of nurses that are now, you take some penicillin, you have a minor surgery and you're out of bed the next day. Things that would have killed people in her time. But I returned to that woman, Joanne, at our Monday meeting. And I returned to my time with John, who mused with me that it feels like we might be going backwards. And I wanted to say that both of them are also right. We're not done. When Joanne said, I thought we were done. I thought back during civil rights we were done. We're not done. Never. Not with anything. And yes, sometimes we can seem to be regressing as a species. But rather than give you the sort of cliched, hopeful statements about the prognosis for humankind, because we don't know, I want to instead share with you something that I found inspiring, that I learned from a woman named Meg Wheatley, who was my teacher at a course I took this summer called, and I hope you like this, Limiting Beliefs That Restrict Our Capacity for Leadership. Doesn't that sound like a blast? Like we would kind of go to coffee, we'd get a break, we had a 3-hour class, and after an hour and a half we'd kind of just be like limping to coffee break. She's a leadership guru, Meg Wheatley, and on the very first day of class, she had us looking at our beliefs about progress. And Meg explained to us that it's only in the past 300 years that Western culture has promoted the belief that life's direction is steadily upward and always capable of improvement. What Meg said that is really profound and bears a lot of study, I certainly intend to study it, is that every other culture tells their story in cycles. So she cited, for instance, the Tibetan circle of the cosmos and the Navajo circle of 4 directions, the bighorn medicine wheel, the labyrinth, and I'm looking at Pearl, for whom I know the labyrinth is a very important spiritual symbol, the labyrinth, which brings us inward on a path and then back outward with more understanding, the sacred hoop, the Celtic knot, circular, cyclical. What Meg said, also something worth thinking about, is When you think that everything is going to get better, you have to therefore treat everything that went before as stupid, or at best misguided, or at worst fanciful and primitive. Now that really is a very humbling thing to think about. But it's also, I hope, liberating. I want to think with you about our expectations of our world and ourselves individually. So often we feel terrible or disheartened when we don't see steady, linear improvement. I think about those aspirational quotes. Every day, in every way, you're getting better and better, right? Or some version of that. I got a Fitbit recently. How many of you have one of those activity trackers? And you're like, oh, today I walked, 7,024 steps. Tomorrow I got to do 8,000, and it's just very linear, People are so hard on themselves when they can't fulfill the commandment to march every day forward toward perfection, which is actually a pretty tyrannical expectation. We do not have a cultural language for every day. Instead of every day and every way, you're getting better and better. Every day you live, you try to be human, you do your best to function, and sometimes you are not able to. Some days are lost to pain or illness of mind or body, or grief, or exhaustion, or anger. Some days are lost to avoidance and denial. Some days are not given to progress, but to creative dreaming and resting and germinating. The truth is that no one individual and no institution and no society gets better and better every day in every way, nor does nature. Another quote I saw recently that really ministered to me in a moment I was being hard on myself is, nothing in nature blooms all the time. This is true for us also as a species. We live and exist not in a line, but in spiral patterns and dance combinations. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes 1 step forward and 2 steps back. Sometimes a step to the side, sometimes a stumble and a fall. There was another mass shooting yesterday. A guy with a gun and a history of domestic violence in Kalamazoo drove around just randomly killing people. I so fervently hope that someday Americans will look back at this time and see it as a horrible period in history where we were indeed very misguided and stupid before we finally eradicated the plague of gun violence, just as medical science has cured and eradicated certain diseases. But what helps for me, and I hope may help you as well, is to let go of the linear notion of progress, which, if we cling to it, is destined to break our hearts. Instead, I hope that we will work to be, in Meg Wheatley's words, better, more skillful, compassionate presences to each other and to those who are suffering from the disappointment of unfulfilled promises. May our work, which is not done, be fueled by gratitude for the moment-to-moment opportunity to serve the human spirit, so beautifully exemplified in the lives of those women that we honored today. Sarah Drury, Nancy Durkee, Emanuela Minifield, and Suzanne Murray. Not onward and upward forever, but onward and faithfully, as best we can, knowing that the inward work of the Spirit, where much seems dormant, is in fact quite alive. and vital. Amen.